honor Jim Prickett. Jim was the heart and the soul of the Faculty Association. He was the president of the Faculty Association from 91 to 92, and then from 94 to 96. Unfortunately, because of his health, he could not finish his second term, and he passed away in 1996. So the tree that you see right here, this tree was planted for Jim, in honor of Jim, in 1996. And we actually have a picture of what the tree used to look right there. So it has grown a lot since then. So back in 1996, when we planted that tree, the plan was also to put a rock here with a plaque on it. But that unfortunately never happened. So last year, Bill, where are you? Okay, Bill Price came up with renewing the idea of let's put some rocks here with a plaque. And then Gordon, where's Gordon? Back here. Okay, so then Gordon came up with the idea of let's create a garden in honor of Jim. So that's how it all started. Then we contacted the district, we contacted Greg Braun, right there. And we asked Greg, thank you, Greg. We asked Greg if the district would allow us to do something like this, and if the district will actually do the work for us. And he said yes, because he remembered Jim, and he said yes, we will do it. And I can't thank him enough for saying yes, we will do it. Thanks, Greg. And also Tom Corpus. Tom is the man who managed all the planting, all the garden and all the rocks. He actually took us to a tour of looking at all the rocks and decide which one we want. So thank you, Tom. And Jeffrey Peterson, who also helped Tom. And their staff. I don't know if they're here, but Antonio, Carlos, Valentin, Sergio, Rick, Carlos Franco, Beatrice, Hector, Ronald, Jorge, Julian, and Rogelio. Thank you all for making this a reality. And Tom, we have a box of chocolate for you to share with your staff.
Who put that tree there?
So before anything else, I would like to ask Jim's family, Margie, Patty, Jason, and Maya, to what happened to the cover?
The wind.
Okay, so we need to cover the rock and then uncover it again. So I like to ask the family to do the honor of uncovering the rock with the plaque for Jim.
All right. Are we just looking up here? Okay.
And I hope you all take a can of Diet Coke, Jim's favorite drink, and drink it in his honor. We also have many of the previous Faculty Association presidents here. I think I saw Fran Mannion. Okay, and oh, excuse me, Fran Chandler. I'm sorry, Fran Mannion was the Senate president. I'm my chair. Okay, so Fran Chandler, Lance Simpson. Lance is here. Phil Wall. So all of us who became the president of the union or took a leadership position in the union, all of us been affected by Jim, by his wisdom, by his sense of humor, by his style of leadership. And none of us will ever forget him. And his memory is going to stay with us. And everything that he taught us is going to stay with us forever. For me personally, when I started working at SMC as a part-time faculty, I had no idea what the union is because I traveled to the United States from a different country. So Jim is the one who introduced me to union. He taught me what the union is and what they do. He appointed me to be the part-time committee chair after a few years. And he basically started me on my path of becoming a union activist. One lesson that Jim taught me, and I'm never ever going to forget that, and I have used that throughout all these years being involved in the union. So this is the lesson. He said some doors are very hard to open, and at times some doors may feel impossible to be opened. But yes, we can. We can open them. And we have done that. We have opened many doors by following Jim's spirit, Jim's style of leadership. We have done that. And he also told me that when we open doors, they may not be open at the angle that we want. But once they're open, we can work on the angle and make it the way we want it to be. So thank you, Jim. Thank you for everything you have done for all of us, for the union. And I'm going to stop talking. And I'm going to ask Gordon. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gordon Gossett from the English Department. I wonder if you all might just come in a little closer, since then I could see you all a little bit and we could really experience the garden maybe a little bit better if we're not spread out quite so much. In 1996, cancer took Jim's life, but it did not take the life that he left. I think that this garden really will serve as a way to remind us of the life he led. I wanted to thank the person who was really instrumental in creating this space, and that is our landscape architect, Madsen Walter, who's over here taking pictures. Madsen listened to us talk about Jim, and he was able to translate the kind of person that Jim was, in our words, to space, which I think is really a unique gift, and he's really given a gift to this campus by helping us create this space. I'd like to go back a little bit in time to a time when Jim first came here and remind some of us, and for some of us that weren't here then, just to talk briefly about the campus back at the time, back in those days, because it really is a campus and a story that we need to have, I think, as we go forward. I think it informs us today, and it will inform us in the future. I mean, if we just start with this science building, which really was a kind of beginning for the renaissance of this campus as far as the architecture goes. When Jim first came here, and when many of us came here, this building looked a lot like this building over here. And it actually was connected. And then there was the earthquake of 94, and that building was unstable and it came down. So we had science over here. We had what was called foreign language up here. We had the social science department, which included history, was right back here. And then English and ESL was over here. We had about 14,000 students instead of 30,000 students. And Nina Tice was right back here, was the English department chair. And her office was right through here. And we, at that time, and this is now in the early 80s, we had a secretary who I won't put Nina on the spot, but she was, at least at the time, we thought she was the ideal secretary. She was very friendly, she worked well with the students, she was very organized, and of course she left. So then we had a couple of secretaries who stayed for short periods of time. And then we had a new secretary, and his name was Jim Prickett. Now, Jim was not as organized as Don. Some of you may remember Charlie Donaldson, and the earthquake sort of visited his office before the Northridge earthquake here, so his office was always in a great disarray. Jim wasn't quite that bad, but his office was sort of chaotic. There was always a lot of activity around Jim, so his desk was right out here, so if you walk from the door now where KCRW is, Jim's desk was right there. And so I remember one day going in and I needed an ad slip. This is in the day, so we actually had little slips that we had to fill out. And I was looking around, and Don always had them very nicely in order, and we could find them easily. Well, I'm looking to find this, and I'm like rummaging through, and there's all sorts of stuff. And then I opened one drawer, and I thought, I think this is where Don kept them. And there was a ham sandwich in there. And at that moment, Jim came in and said, "Oh, I was looking for that. Where was that?" Okay. I was looking for not a ham sandwich, but an ad slip. But that's it. One thing, as I said, around Jim there were always these ongoing conversations. We didn't realize, or at least I didn't realize, that he had a PhD in history at the time. I kind of had a vague sense that he taught here, but I found out later that he taught here part-time, and like many of us, well, there were many of us that went and taught elsewhere. We were, teaching 6 classes, 7 classes to make a living, and there was some history, certainly, with the part-timers on this campus, which I think other people will get into today. But Jim decided that he didn't want to do the frequent flyer thing, but he really wanted to stay focused here because he really loved this campus. He wanted to devote himself to this campus, so he took the job working here. And as I said, people would be hanging around his office in the front there talking. And there was one day where Jim was standing in the door frame, and he said, it's really very important that, and then he looked out in the hall, and then he started walking down to do something, and then he went off. So that was the answer. I never learned what was so important from him. But I think one of the things that really, now looking back and sort of as he was a professor of history, if you'll forgive me for talking about history for a second, I do think that he was really the right person with the right set of qualities at the right time to really change this campus. He had a very innocent quality to him in a way, a very self-effacing personality. There wasn't really this overarching sense of ego with Jim. He really was very easy to laugh. Really appreciated the conversation that he had with all of us on a variety of subjects. And I think that, when I think back of, my times in some leadership positions on the campus, I really had at the back of my mind Jim's example of collegiality, interest in people, a real sense of trying to find common ground and cooperate with people. And so I took that forward from the time that I knew Jim, which was really in the English department over all those different conversations. By recognizing Jim and the past here, I think that it helps us to claim the present and to really have a concept of what we want today. What are things that we value today? His example guides us and helps us shape the future. Cancer may have taken Jim's life too early in 1996, but it didn't take the life he led. May this garden, our stories about him and his legacy of leadership live on. Thank you. I'm supposed to introduce Bill Price. Professor of Life Science.
Sure glad to see everybody here. To honor Jim, I was asked to talk about the early days of Jim getting this all started with the Faculty Association. As Gordon mentioned, we were all part-timers, I still am adjunct by choice mostly, but in those days we earned less than 50% per hour of what a full-time person taught, and we were limited to 60% of the load. So if you multiply 60% by 50%, we were only making 30% of what a full-time person would make. And so, as Gordon said, many part-timers taught at more than one college and ended up teaching really at loads that were sometimes twice as great as a full-timer would make just to make ends meet. And back in the mid-80s, somewhere around 85, 86, 87, somewhere in there, it's over 25 years, so it's hard to remember exactly when that occurred, but time flies when you're having fun, I guess. But I got a notice that there was going to be a meeting of part-time instructors to talk about how we could improve our situations. And at that first meeting, there was only 5 or 6 people. There was Gordon Gossett and Jim Prickett, of course, Lance Simpson, myself, and Stan Mock, and Tina. I can't remember what Tina's last name is. Chambers. Tina Chambers. And there were probably a couple others there that I remember at that first meeting. And we were adding ideas around it. How could we get the Faculty Association to really put in greater effort to improve our situation? And we decided that one way that we could do that would be to recruit the more adjunct faculty to join the union and then elect a part-timer as union president. So we set about doing that as our first task. And I ran across some data here that as we went out, we collared our colleagues, part-timers in the different departments. Back in April of '87, we had 36 part-timers in the union. That represented 16% of the membership. By September of '87, it had grown by 12 people to 48, which is 20%. By November of '87, we had 67 members of part-timers, which represented 26, and then in April of '88, it had jumped to 29%, and by November of '89, we had 31%, at which time there was an election. And we ran Jim for president, and we got him elected president by just a few votes. You remember what it was, Lance? It was very close. But Jim became president, and one of the things that he emphasized with us was that many of the full-time faculty would be very worried about having a part-timer as president. And Jim was very emphatic that we had to look after the full-time faculty as well as our own interest in here. He felt that together we needed to have solidarity together, and I think he alleviated the fears that many full-timers had that he wouldn't be looking out for them. Also, one of the things that occurred was that he was given a full-time job very soon after becoming president. And then later when Lance was elected president, he was given a full-time job. So the joke was, become president of the Faculty Association and you get a full-time position. And it worked out well for them. But back in February of '88, Jim and Gordon and Lance were very instrumental in getting a letter written that published in the editorial section of the LA Times about the conditions of part-time instructors. And it's just one of the few steps that Jim is responsible for improving a lot. Today, because not only of Jim getting it started, but because of the other Faculty Association presidents, Fran and Phil, The equity pay now is about 81% of what a full-timer makes, and on the way up. But Jim got that started back then. So we have that.
Way to remember Jim, and I remember some of Jim's quirks. He liked to tell people that he knew French, and that he'd taken French for 12 years. He said he took French 1 for 4 years, then he took French 2 for 4 years, and French 3 for 4 years. So if you said to him, "Parlez-vous français?" he would always say, "Aujourd'hui," which is French for today. So we're here. Nous sommes ici aujourd'hui for Jim. That was the only French he knew, actually. He liked to invite me over to his apartment to talk about union stuff, and he liked to put on some of his avant-garde jazz records. So he'd put one on, and I'd listen for a minute or so, and then I would say, "Jim, when's he going to be finished practicing?" And he would give me a very strange look, like, "Don't you get it?" I want to talk about Jim's vision. Jim did have a vision for the Faculty Association to be a much stronger, much more vibrant union, and he always said to me that his ambition in life was to be like Jimmy Hoffa, to have his own union. So when he became president, he was able to achieve that. But we spent many, many hours talking about the Faculty Association and what we could do to make it better and stronger. So when he became president, he was able to begin implementing some of his vision. One of the things was to get some more things in the contract for part-time faculty, and Bill mentioned first steps towards pro rata pay, and I was at the bargaining table that day. I'll never forget when Tom Donner came back in the room and said, "Okay, we'll agree to pro rata pay." And Jim was there on the negotiating team. Terry Bernstein was chief negotiator, and we had Jim fainted. We had to throw cold water on him. So they came back with 65%. So that's where we started. We started 65%, but that gave us the beginning, the foundation, and we've continued to build on that every year since then, almost every year. Another important thing that Jim got in the contract was associate faculty. So Jim and I had always been puzzled by the arguments that tenure was good for full-time faculty, but bad for part-time faculty. We never could figure that one out. And we were finally able to get the associate faculty provision in the contract, gosh, it's 20 years ago now. And we started with 10. 10 people were eligible to become associate faculty. And there was a lot of internal discussion about, well, should we really agree to that? 10, that's really nothing. That's insulting. We should try for it. But Jim said, no, we need to get it into the contract, because once it's in there, it's going to stay in there, and we can continue to build on that. And we did. And so over the years, we've gotten, I don't know how many we're up to now, several hundred. 540 part-time faculty now have reemployment rights. I mean, it just boggles my mind. In terms of internal organizing in the union, Jim knew that one of the most important things was to have an economic base and to represent all the members. And the best way to do that was to establish what's called an agency fee. So up until about 20 years ago, membership in the association was voluntary, and that also meant that paying dues to the association was voluntary. Yet, under the law, the union is obligated to fairly represent everyone in the bargaining unit. So, on one level, that's a fundamental unfairness. On another level, it's just bad politics. So Jim was able to organize an election of the faculty to vote for whether we wanted to have an agency fee or not, and he got that through. It passed, and now everyone who's represented by the Faculty Association pays what's called an agency fee to the union. You can still voluntarily opt out if you want. Do we have any full-timers here or not? 2. So all full-timers except 2 now belong to the Faculty Association, and well over half the part-time faculty, I believe. So, so that agency fee gave the Faculty Association a revenue stream that it desperately needed in order to begin to build, be more professional, and become stronger both internally and externally. Another thing that Jim got through was some revisions to the Constitution and bylaws of the association, which gave more representation to the part-time faculty, or I should say it gave them the opportunity to have more representation through their own organizing efforts, but it also guaranteed the rights of the full-time faculty as well. So that was another major step forward in the history of the Faculty Association to make it so much stronger, and that we're all together in solidarity. An injury to one is an injury to all, and that's how Jim saw the union organizing. So I want to thank you for being here today, and I want to thank Jim. I want to thank Jim for I had the opportunity and privilege to know him, and for his life to affect mine and almost everyone here. And thank you, Jim. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And please stay. We have hors d'oeuvres. If anyone else would like to share memories of Jim, step on up. All right. Okay.
I think in jail overnight or something up in Berkeley for being part of a sit-in after the Vietnam War, or during the Vietnam War, I suppose. And yeah, I don't know, he must have been sitting in some administrator's office where he wasn't supposed to be. And so I said to him, Jim, how come you weren't clever enough to escape that penalty? And he said, well, he wanted to defend himself, and he thought he could have done an excellent job of doing that. But other people told him he absolutely had to get a lawyer. And so he did. And he said when the lawyer walked into the room, the first words out of his mouth were a quotation from T.S. Eliot, "April is the cruelest month." And he said, I knew I was doomed. I said, yes, you were. But seriously, it was wonderful to work with Jim. And I was secretary of the Faculty Association, I think, when he was president. I was secretary a long time. I think he may even have fibbed a little bit in telling me that the office wasn't up for re-election when it really should have been, because nobody else wanted to do that job at that particular time. At any rate, it was wonderful to work with him, and I have very fond memories of him. And I'm very happy that this garden is going to be a memorial to him. Thank you.
Hard to eat the food because Kathy's better sweet.
I just want to say a short something about the tree. My name is Kathy Seidman. I'm in the ESL department here. And I knew Jim, I came to the faculty in 1991, so I knew Jim for several years. We didn't have, after Jim passed away, somehow I got in charge of developing the website, and this was back in the olden days where you had to know computer code and stuff like that, and we didn't have an image. And I remember coming out to the tree and taking color samples from the tree, and the original website was actually green and lavender, just like this tree, which I remember Fran saying, I think we need something maybe a little more professional, maybe just green, you know. But for those of you who are familiar with the Faculty Association logo, some people wonder why do we have a tree, and this is the tree. This is our logo. So, thank you.
I just want to say one little thing. When Jim was dying, he said he couldn't believe this was happening because he had never in his life been this happy. He said he'd always wanted to work at a college like this. He said that he's always wanted to live by the beach, and he loved his apartment, and he loved doing beach volleyball, and he loved his colleagues, he loved the students, and he always loved history. And to bring that all together, he was just so happy. And I asked him, I said, do you think it's easier to die when you're happy or when you're sad and depressed? And he said, everything's easier when you're happy, even dying. And I just wanted to tell everybody that all of you, everyone here, contributed so much to his happy death. Thank you so much. This is just an incredible tribute, and I can't think of a better place to have a tribute for Jim Prickett than in a college campus, doing what he loved. Thank you.